Oh, hello YouTube! Today on the Naughty Librarian, I am bringing you my end of May wrap-up. I've said this a few times already, but for people who may not have seen those videos, I have changed my format to doing 2 wrap-ups a month because I wanted to get more in-depth about the books I review, so there's fewer books, so therefore I can talk about them longer without having like a monstrously long video. So, I did 1 video previously, well, 2. 1 was a rant though, but I already wrapped up some of the books I read. These are the rest of the books I read in the month of May. First category is fantasy, and I read 2 of those. Starting things off strong, I have Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 6 of 7 in the Throne of Glass series, and it's kind of a parallel story, so it's not like furthering the plot so much as it is another plot that was happening at the same time. This is following Chaol and Nezrin. They're going on an adventure. They were going to the southern continent, to Antica, because they want to talk to the Coggin and say, hey, Aelin Galathinius is here and she's about to fuck shit up. You gonna help her what? But, you know, with more diplomacy. Also, at the end of Queen of Shadows, sorry, spoiler, slight spoiler, Chaol was very badly injured and he is actually paralyzed right now. Paralyzed from the hips down. And so, okay, odd thing, they keep, like, finding ways to work into the story that Chaol's dick works, because, yes, he's in a wheelchair and he can't move his legs, but everyone's just like, so does your dick work? Like, he gets asked that, like, a lot, and he's just like, yes, my dick works, okay, okay? And I understand the frustration on his part, because I don't want people asking about my dick. I don't even have a dick, and I don't want people to ask about it. So, anyways, that's just like a side note on the story. There's like so many times they brought that up. Anyway, so Chaol and Nezrin, they are on this parallel journey. The events that's happening during Tower of Dawn are happening at the same time as the events that happened in Empire of Storms. So we are seeing how other people who are very much outside of the main conflict are finding out news about it. They're finding out little tidbits of information, what's been going on, how it's seen from an outsider's perspective. Most of the story genuinely isn't about what's happening in Empire of Storms though, but it is interesting to see it from an outside perspective. Also, we are going to a brand new place in this universe. We went to Antica and the southern continent. And I kind of feel like it's loosely structured kind of around like Genghis Khan. It's kind of an interesting idea. It's like a fantasy version of like Genghis Khan. And I was like super into it. Chaol and Nezrin, let's get back to them. And they're both trying very much to navigate this royal court that's full of like shitty people and intrigue and lies and spies, and like it's a whole new court structure. Also, you know, it's Sarah J. Maas, so obviously there's gonna be some romance in here. Chaol and Nezrin do have like an on and off again relationship we've seen in other books of the series. In this one, they go to Antica, and they're kind of on, but maybe kind of off. They're just in that weird, are we more than friends place? Or are we just friends who touch each other's genitals? I don't know. They're in that weird zone. Okay, there are going to be a few spoilers here. I'm just going to say that because it's very hard to review a book without saying what happened in it. So just be aware there might be some slight spoilers. Nezrin and Chaol. So they had that fucked up relationship at the beginning of the book, and then by the end of the book, they are both happy but with different people. So since a big part of the story is these other relationships, I need to talk about them. Let's start with Nezrin because she's really cool. She's a fierce warrior. She's smart. And she meets Sartak, who is a prince, and everyone assumes will be the heir to the Cognate. So she meets him, and he is very dashing. He rides a giant bird. In previous books of the series, we have seen wyverns and the witches riding these wyverns. So now we're in this southern continent, and you have rook riders, and rooks are like these giant like birds who are, you know, big enough for people to ride. They're big birds, okay? And they like, you know, I'm assuming they're kind of like hawks or eagles and stuff, like birds of prey, and they ride them into battle and stuff. So very cool, very fierce birds that these guys are riding. Sartak, dashing prince. He's a captain of the Rook Riders, and I was just like, okay, like, Sartak could probably get it. Like, let's be real. So, Nezrin and him seem very much kind of like kindred spirits, and I really liked seeing them get together and their relationship grow, because Sartak is a guy who's just like, you're not the substitute for anybody. Like, I genuinely like you because you're dope. So I feel like Nezrin needed that a lot. And then Kayal does meet a woman who I actually think is perfect for him, Irene. Irene, we actually learned about, we met in the very first prequel book, The Assassin's Blade. She is in that book, and finally now she's back in the game. So she is a healer, and she has kind of magical healing abilities, and she is supposed to help Kayal heal his paralysis. Right off the bat, Irene doesn't want to do this. She doesn't like anybody from Ardalan because, you know, Ardalan murdered a lot of people throughout the years. They were, you know, demons. So her and Kayal, immediately she doesn't like him. And the whole thing with her personality is like, a lot of times I felt like Kayal needs somebody that he can like nurture. He's very much like, I want to be the knight in shining armor kind of guy. And Irene's just like, I don't need saving. You need to stop being a wuss and stop feeling sorry for yourself. She's very blunt and kind of just like not putting up with his shit. And then after seeing that dynamic, I'm like, that's the kind of girl he needs. He doesn't need some like weak woman he needs to protect. He needs someone who's gonna be like, stop being an asshole. Just tell him what's up. And throughout the course of the story, you know, there's scheming, there's plot intrigue, there's political aspirations and like lies and spies. It is all, you know, Game of Thronesy. And I did enjoy all of that, even though some characters like pissed me off because they were just being jackholes. But I did love Kayal and Irene. I thought they were really cute together. Irene's a really nice character. She is kind of like really bitchy at times. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying it because it's true. She's genuinely like real salty. Like a little too salty, I'll say. So she's not necessarily my favorite character, but I do enjoy her as a character a lot. So do I enjoy this book? Yes, I enjoyed it. I had fun reading it. Is it my favorite book of the series? No, it's not. It wasn't as fun as all of the Aelin chapters and all those books and all those characters, because those characters are super fun. I really like all the pulpy intrigue there. This one, less pulpy intrigue. But it goes with the territory because these are characters that are very different than Aelin. So it's going to be a different feeling book. It's definitely a universe-expanding book because we're going to different places, and it's definitely side action. I'm assuming lots of things that happen in here are going to be important in the last book. But it was important to read to get before the last book, and I did enjoy it. It just wasn't my favorite of the series. The other fantasy book I read was The Queens of inouslier by Tessa Gratton. Real talk for a minute here. This needs to be 200 pages shorter. Oh my gosh, it does. Oh my gosh. Like, I read a lot of thick books, and this is like 574 pages. So it's a long book, and I read a lot of long books. Tower of Dawn was super long. However, long books need to have good pacing and have lots of things happening and plot and action. They need things to keep you interested. Queens of inouslier, like literally nothing happens for so often in this book. Nothing is happening. Literally nothing. And it says 3 daughters, 1 throne, all out war. It says all out war on the cover. There is no war in this. There is 0 war. I'm dead serious. No one goes to war. There are 2 duels. That is the extent of like the action in here. There are 2 duels. like let's like readjust our blurb here. But before I go any further, this is a retelling of King Lear, but from the perspective of the 3 daughters. And you have 3 very different daughters. Gala in this is very much warlike, and sometimes I felt she kind of read as if she was perhaps a transgender character. There was a lot of scenes where she was just like, I wish I was a man, or like, I do all these things as if I was a man. She asked a witch once, just turn me into a man. So I feel like she might have been a bit of a transgender character. It's never really gone into very in depth, but like she was always very much at war with her body and she wants to be a warrior and a knight and a king. She always refers to herself as a king, never a queen. So I do feel like that's kind of like where they were going with that story. Then you have Regan, and honestly, Regan was my favorite character in here. She was so good. Oh my gosh, she was so good. Regan is the middle daughter, and in the original version, she's kind of the light skirt of the crew. She was very much synonymous with lust and sexuality, and in here she kind of still is, but told from a much more feminist perspective. She's also a witch in this one, and she is also very much about love, and she is married to a man named Connolly, and she loves him. I genuinely love their love story. So good. Connolly was dope, okay? Let's just say that. Her husband is really great. He was kind of like low-key feminist in this era, because he was just like, yeah, my wife's super powerful, and she should be queen. He never says, like, she should be queen because then I'm king. He never occurs to him to say that. He's very much always on her side, and he, like, fully accepts how powerful she is, and he doesn't try to, like, take that away from her ever. So, Connolly, good dude. Liked him a lot. And then you have Ilya, who is Cordelia. And she is very much, like, the daughter who's all like, I am truth and justice and duty. And she's the same here. However, she is much more spiritual, and she is a star priestess, so she basically reads the stars in the sky and can make predictions out of it to tell you about your life, what is like your star chart, essentially. So she's very much that realm. But oh man, like she was just like, I know she's like a main character and we're supposed to really like her, but the thing is, I found her... I don't even have a word for it. I'll try to explain. She was just so unsure of everything that it was bothersome. And it's like, yeah, I understand being unsure about what direction you should go, about your life choices, about who you are. Those are all really great struggles to like read about and dive into. But the thing is, you need to come to a conclusion about that. And I still feel like by the end of it, yes, she does have a path she's walking down, but I still very much feel like she doesn't really know what she wants. There is a neighboring king who is in love with her, Morimaros. They call him Mars for short. And I loved Morimaros so much. He is an excellent king, and I'm just like, Ilya, what are you doing? Stop like making moon eyes at this other guy. He's bad for you. Morimaros is dope. Go hang out with him. Go. Like, I just want to shove them together because Morimaros is a great character and she did him wrong. Just gonna say. I've just been talking about characters this whole time, but the whole point of the book is the characters because there's not a lot happens plot-wise. I was saying that earlier. It is 200 pages too long. There are so many chapters in here. They're unnecessary to the plot of the story at all. Like, the whole plot is like King Lear is old and insane. And someone needs to take over. And his 3 daughters, well, the older 2 definitely want it, and they're plotting against him. And then the younger daughter's just like, I love daddy. However, that's kind of all that happens. They just talk about how I don't like my dad, and he's crazy. And then this and this. And then, like, let's talk about that. And let's talk about this. And then, like, oh, here's some, like, emotional drama. And, like, nothing happens plot-wise. This is all very much character study, which I enjoy. Don't get me wrong. I love like a juicy character study, but you have to get to a point eventually. Like, oh my gosh, like it needs to be 200 pages shorter and the pacing needs to be fixed. Like you need to have action to make the plot move forward because there's no action moving the plot forward. It's just people talking about stuff. And then the next day happens and that's how the plot moves forward. So it has a lot of pacing problems. It's very long-winded, and there's all of that going on for it. I'll say that. However, I did still really enjoy this book. It is incredibly well written. Oh my gosh, like it's so well written. The magic system in here is gorgeous. It's very much based on medieval paganism, so it's very much nature-based. And they like speak to trees and rivers and like the earth spirits. And it's a lot of that kind of magic and very elemental. And like, it feels kind of like dark and dangerous. And I like that. The magic system in here is absolutely great. I loved it. However, it's so fucking long. Like, oh my gosh, like I was trudging through this. And I don't want to trudge through it because it's so well written and the characters are so great. And it was just like, ugh, just trudging through this book where nothing's happening except like all of my favorite characters getting killed off. Like, I knew it was coming because I've read Lear before, so I know a lot of people die in it, but it's just like, all of my favorites, like, they just kept getting killed off, and it made me upset. Final thoughts, very good. However, this is way too long, and the pacing is really bad. So it has its problems, even though it's really beautifully written. So I guess it depends on the reader. Like, if you don't mind a slow-paced book where not a lot happens, but it is beautifully written and there's a lot of cool magic and stuff, this is totally going to be your jam. You'll love it to bits. If you're kind of like me, who's just very much like, oh, I need something to happen now, like, where I freak out, this is going to be like a trudge. You're going to have to drag yourself through the book, but you will still like it. Next category is historical fiction, and I read one of those. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it is a fucking masterpiece. I'll just say that. Sorry. Review over. No, it's so good. It's like one of the best books I've read this year so far. It's so good. It's so good. In this book, we are following Evelyn Hugo. She is an old Hollywood movie star. She is an aging icon, and she is giving an interview to this woman who's kind of like an unknown writer, pretty much. She's kind of like a low-key author, but she's like, you're gonna write this story. I'm writing my biography, and you're gonna write it. And she's like, well, okay, you're fucking Evelyn Hugo. I'm gonna do this. And Evelyn Hugo goes on to tell her the story of her life. Like the title suggests, Evelyn Hugo had 7 husbands. So the story is kind of told by husband. Like, her story begins with her first husband, and then she moves on through her husbands and how her life changed during those periods. However, the one thing that you don't find out from the title is that Evelyn's love of her life, the person she loved wildly, was her wife. She was madly in love with a woman. And their love story starts in like the 50s and the 60s. And in that era in Hollywood, you couldn't be out openly. Like, it was not okay. They would have lost everything. They would have lost their careers. They would have lost literally everything they ever cared about if they were ever open about their feelings for each other, because the person she is in love with was Celia, who is another movie star. So 2 movie stars in love with each other. That's awesome. But with their 2 women, they would have lost everything. So it's a lot of them being desperately in love with each other but having to hide. And that's very sad just as a sentence, let alone living it as a reality. And throughout her life, she did marry several men for various reasons. The thing about Evelyn is that she is very ambitious and she is a realist. So she's very much not above doing the wrong things for the right reasons. And she's very smart and she's like a shark, and I liked her for that so much. I might be a Ravenclaw, but I get along with Slytherins really well. You find out all about her husbands, and sometimes she married them just for, you know, to have a beard, or maybe they were friends, or maybe it was just, you know, so this movie will do good. Like, let's pretend we're in a romance. It was very much like Hollywood drama, and I love that. If you're into like old Hollywood noir, you're gonna love it. But at its very core, it is about Evelyn and Celia and their love for each other, and how it got like distorted and fucked up over time, and things happened that drove them apart and things happened that drew them together. It's a whole like messed up story about her life, and it's so fascinating to read all of it and how she dealt with it, because especially in the 50s and the 60s, because that was a very different time period. So finding out how Evelyn survived the things she survived, and how she thrived, and how she ultimately became the Evelyn Hugo, you know? So good. So good. It's so well written. Holy potatoes, it's so well written. I'm like in love with Taylor Jenkins Reid, low-key. Like, I want to read all of her books now. I bought some more of them so I can read them because this one was so freaking good. Like, it's so good. I'm going to read you guys my favorite quote from the book because I feel like it sums up a lot of the story. No one is just a victim or a victor. Everyone is somewhere in between. People who go around casting themselves as one or the other are not only kidding themselves, but they're also painfully unoriginal. Already, that like couple sentences I read was so well written, very clever, and it kind of like sums up the story very nicely. So yes, Evelyn Hugo, she's not a victor or a victim, she's somewhere in the middle. And if she would have cast herself in one shadow or another, she'd be incredibly unoriginal. So yes, so good, so freaking good. I love it with like all of my hearts. I only have one heart, but I love it with all of it. Next category is romance, and I read 2 of those. I picked up 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. Now, let's just get this out of the way. Let's get the elephant in the room addressed. Sally Thorne wrote The Hating Game, which was incredible. Everyone loved it. It's a great rom-com. It's like enemies to lovers bickering, and it's a rom-com. It's cute. And then 99% Mine came out, and everyone's like, this is bad, because everyone read The Hating Game and loved it. Here's the deal with that idea. The Hating Game and 99% Mine, they are very different books. Like, frankly, I feel like they're 2 different authors. They're very different from each other. So if you go into 99% Mine expecting The Hating Game, you're going to be devastated because it's nothing like The Hating Game at all. In fact, like, while I was reading 99% Mine, I forgot it was by Sally Thorne. Like, I genuinely thought it was by a different author. Like, if you go in with that kind of mentality, actually, just forget The Hating Game exists. Think this is a different author and a different series and a different book. You go into it like that, it's actually pretty okay. I enjoyed it. The cover is like completely a lie though. I will say that because look at this cover, okay? Tell me this isn't a rom-com. You can't, because it looks like a freaking rom-com, and the thing is, it's totally not a rom-com. It's very much a drama. This is a contemporary drama. Now, that being said, this is about Darcy and Tom. Darcy is part of a twin with her brother, Jamie. And then Tom, this guy, he was their childhood friend and neighbor. And they've all grown up together. And Jamie has always been best friends with Tom, even though Darcy's like low-key always been in love with Tom. And Tom, low-key, always in love with Darcy. So right there, they kind of had like a mutual attraction that was never explored. Then you get like later in life and like both of them are kind of like emotionally stunted adults, so they kind of fuck up a lot with each other, and you just want them to get together and just like be nice to each other and make out already. Damn it. But they're both like emotional cripples, so they don't do that for a long time. Darcy and Tom are no longer children, they're adults now, and Darcy has inherited this cottage that belonged to her grandmother, and Tom is a construction owner, like he owns a construction company, so they hire Tom and his crew to remodel this house so they could flip it. And so it's Darcy and Tom in close quarters for long periods of time. And honestly, they bicker so much, and like bicker in a way that's just like, just fuck already. So it is a bit of a slow burn, I will say that. They finally do get together, you know, obviously it's a romance, but it does take a while to get there because both of them are just emotionally stunted people. So a lot of the times you're just gonna get mad at them for being emotionally stupid, but it gets there. Another criticism I saw about this book was that Darcy was unlikable. And I can see where that comes from, but like I didn't find her unlikable. Darcy is very much a character who's hurting, and she has like a bad heart. So she has that going on in the back of her mind, and also she feels abandoned by people, and she feels very lonely, and she's adrift in her life. So she's very much a character who's hurting inside, and she does take that out on other people and herself. She's not making good life decisions. So I get like where the unlikable thing comes from, but I don't find her unlikable. I just feel like she's a character who's hurting, who needs like, you know, to get their shit together. And if it was a male character who was like that, I don't think people would say she's unlikable. So let's just put that in there. But yeah, it's very much a drama. It's about people who are definitely hurting in life and they're set adrift and they need to get their shit together. And then they find each other and they kind of get their shit together, essentially. Which is a lot of romances, and that's not a problem. I like a lot of books like that. And the biggest thing here is that why I enjoyed this is because I forgot Sally Thorne wrote The Hating Game while I was reading it. So if you go in here expecting a rom-com, expecting The Hating Game, you will hate this with the fire of 1,000 suns. If you just go in expecting a book and forget who wrote the previous book, you'll probably pretty much like it. It was fun. It was a good book. It has a happy ending. Obviously, it's a romance. But yeah, it's very much a drama. It's not the book you're expecting it to be from the cover and the author, but I did really enjoy it. The other romance I read this month was Rafe by Rebecca Weatherspoon. As you can see on the cover, it says a buff male nanny. That's what it's about. This is about a single mom with twin 6-year-olds. She's also a very accomplished heart surgeon, so she has a very demanding job, and very adorable 6-year-old girls. She needs a nanny. And her old nanny just like up and quits unexpectedly. So she's like, oh shit, I need someone now. Through like multiple friends, she gets referred to this guy named Rafe, who has been a nanny for a long time. And, you know, male nanny, he has a full beard, he's 6'5", he's buff, he has tattoos, he rides a motorcycle. Not the typical nanny. He's like typical bad boy material. However, he's actually like bad boy body, but soft boy inside. And like it does things for me. One thing leads to another, and Rafe is hired to be the nanny for these little girls. And Rafe and Sloane, the mother, have a mutual attraction to each other. So they kind of flirt a bit, and then they kind of kiss a bit, and then they kind of like do it a lot. It is very smutty, and it's kind of a rare unicorn of a romance, because there's so many like tropes in romance that are subverted here, because there's so many romances where people like get broken up for the stupidest of reasons. That happens in every romance, like going, oh no, misunderstanding, we break up, we're sad, we get back together. That's like the plot of all of them. And I'm like, how many people break up multiple times in their relationship before they're happy forever? Like, I don't think that happens a lot, so it's kind of unbelievable. However, in Rafe, it's two adults who communicate with each other honestly, and then have an awesome relationship that's functional. So it's like a glorious little unicorn of a book. If these characters have a problem or they need to talk about something, they talk about it, and they, you know, no misunderstandings, they talk about how they feel, and then they bang the bejesus out of each other. It's great. It's very low drama. There is some like ex-baby daddy drama in here, but nothing with the main couple and their relationship. They have a very healthy foundation to the relationship that I'm like into. Overall, it's like a fun, quick little read. It's super short. I think it's under 300 pages. Let me see. Yes, it is 252 pages. This is quick. It's a short ass book, and it is like a quick little fun read, low drama. So if you need like a palate cleanser book after like heavy books, this will probably do really well for you, because it's just like a cute, quick little thing with cute kids, and there's like a hot male nanny. Like, what more do you need to know? It's just a fun, cute little story. My last category is Wicked Spirits Book Club, and Guilty Pleasures by Laurel K. Hamilton was the book of the month for May. We are going to be doing a live show for this. Our date of the live show is June 9th, 9 a.m. Pacific time on Lauren from the Novelush's channel. I'll post like information down below so you can check it out, but that's when the live show is going to be, when Lauren, Brandy, and I are going to be discussing this book more in detail. But for the sake of this video, I want to like give a little bit of a wrap up on it. Guilty Pleasures. It is the beginning of the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series, which I do realize Laurel K. Hamilton has been writing for like 20 years. There are like almost 30 books in that series. Holy shit. But anyway, this is the first book. And it is, you know, it's a vampire hunter story, so there's vampires, obviously. And I did appreciate multiple things about it. I did like the fact that it is a book about scary vampires. They're not misunderstood creatures. They are scary creatures. They will murder you. There's also were creatures, so there's like a whole thing with were rats, which is just disturbing, because they're rats. They're rat people. And like no one wants to see a were rat. Ew. But if there are were rats, one can assume there are werewolves and were other animals out there. But yeah, so it's vampires and were creatures and like all these paranormal stuff. And we follow Anita, who is a vampire hunter. Anita has a very dark past with vampires. I do believe she was almost killed by them multiple times. She has a lot of scars on her body from them. She doesn't like vampires, for good reason. And she gets hired to find out who has been killing vampires. There have been several vampire murders throughout the city, and she gets forced into this case where she has to figure out who is killing these vampires. I think there might have been supposed to be like a love interest situation with Jean-Claude, who is like an old French vampire, which like sounds sexy, but, you know, vampire. So he's like probably the least scary of the vampires, but he's still a scary vampire. And I can see maybe something happening with her and Jean-Claude in the future perhaps, but nothing happens in this one. There's no romance or smut at all yet. It's just the start of an urban fantasy series. Also, it is so 90s. Oh my gosh, it is so 90s. A lot of it's written in kind of a timeless way, so it doesn't necessarily read 90s, but there are certain things in here that are so 90s. Like, Anita Blake has a beeper. A fucking beeper. And at one point she's like, oh, I need to call the office, and she looks for a payphone. So like, a lot of things in this book are very 90s. And it was kind of like fun nostalgia a little bit, and yeah, it's vampires, it's 90s, it's vampire hunting, it's very gory, but yeah, it's like a 90s vampire story. If you want a 90s vampire story, like, ta-da, here's your jam right here. Whew. All right, I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Those are the last books I read in May. I kind of really like this format because now I can talk about books more in depth. So let me know in the comments down below, have you read any of these books? If so, which ones are your favorites, your least favorites? Let me know what you have on deck for June. Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon.